You guys still there?
Yeah, we're here, man. No, but my mom does watch. I was like, damn, audience of one.
Jade's reconnecting.
Are we live right now? Just the two of us? Oh,
You
there
might
you
be.
go.
Yeah, you're live. Yep.
Okay.
All right. Hello, everybody. We had a little bit of. I went live and then I jumped right off the the screen. So we're about 40 seconds in. So hopefully YouTube were not doing anything to get you in trouble while I was gone. So welcome everybody. I may be a little bit delayed, so it's possible I will drop out. But Danny and Mike look like they have a good signal. But welcome to the show. We are going live on my YouTube channel, on my Substack channel. LinkedIn is not available today for whatever reason. It might just be because I'm in Costa Rica, and and on my Facebook channel. And the topic for today, as you all know, Danny and I usually show up here and we talk about leadership, and we talk about leadership specifically as it pertains to men, but we go in a lot of different directions here. And this is why we bring in very close friends of ours. So today we've got several jumping in. Those of you who have followed me for any length of time know Michael Zara, who's been on my podcast several times. We usually talk romance and personal development when Mike is on. So he's jumping in with Danny and I today. And the topic of this conversation is we're right now in a chaotic world, and we're seeing various responses. And I want to jump into this and talk about the response of men in particular. And of course, we are going to keep this as neutral as possible. One of our, theories here at Next Level Human is that it is really about helping us all live sort of better lives. And so this idea that the way that we see the world and our philosophy of living not only impacts us and our level of fulfillment, but influences and inspires other people around us. And of course, when the world is chaotic, it creates a lot of angst and a lot of upset around the world. And men in particular respond in different ways. And so, welcome, Danny. Welcome, Mike. We might have some others joining us. But, Mike, let's start with you because we started off with this idea today. You and I were texting this morning, and Mike was texting me this morning and just basically being like, man, I'm really kind of dumbfounded and upset a little bit by the response to many people in the world who I respect and admire, and not really understanding kind of where they are coming from. And so Mike and I were kind of going back and forth about, and I was talking a little bit about how I have different friends from many different circles, political circles and value-based, different values and different interests, and Mike and I were going back and forth. So I would love to just give the floor to you, Mike, and kind of hear what's going on in your mind. Let's just keep it to like what is the thing that's really frustrating you that you're really struggling with in regards to what's going on in the world for you and how you're seeing the response.
Oh, wow. That's such a loaded question.
It
Um,
is.
it really is. It's hard. It's hard to answer that, and I will try and use my words eloquently and appropriately, uh, because it is an emotional question, right? Like it triggers me and pings me on levels that relate to me, that are personal to me, that I've been through. Like I've been through your education and your program and your coaching for a long time. I've kind of understood the tiers, right? The base level self, the culture level self, the next level human self. And you had a beautiful post this morning, which is what, because I've been thinking about this for the last probably few days. The topic around, I don't want to get into politics, but some of the things going on in the world right now have really been difficult for me to watch, to witness, and there are always two sides of the story, and I'm trying my best to understand both sides. But to get back to the point, I think leadership and what I'm watching right now is just the way some leaders are talking, their words, their vocabulary, their tone, their dismissive behavior, their attitude. We as humans are always going to have opposite opinions, opposing beliefs, but just how we handle them and how we even make space to listen, to be open minded, to learn. I think leadership and leaders have an innate ability to hold that space, to put their own beliefs on pause for a second, so they can listen and try and make sense of the counterpart. And I just don't feel like that's even in the realm of possibility for our current leaders or current leader. And I'll say one last thing. It's like I was online and I saw an old post. I think it was who was it? Was it who ran against Obama? Was it? It was
Romney,
John
McCain, John
McCain.
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 Mm.
McCain. I saw like McCain address like one of the people in his rally was like, I can't believe Obama. He's a Muslim. He's like, no, time out. Like time out. Set the record straight. Created space for respect, mutual respect in the political realm. And it was beautiful to watch. And it was like, as I feel like we've just strayed so far from that, because I'm not sure the current leaders in our cabinet, in the commander in chief would create that space, would handle it the same way. Because it's very just that's just my where I'm coming from. It's painful. It hurts hurtful to me that we just lose some of the respect and the dignity that leaders have exhibited in the past that we don't have right now.
Yeah. How about you, Danny? How would you respond to that? Like, where would you jump off from that?
Well, I probably would pose. I probably just pose a question for you guys. I don't have any disagreement with what Mike said, and this is a foundational thing. I work with a lot of people in the corporate environment, and we talk a lot about this mutual respect too. I work with a lot of leaders, and I'll never forget this one coaching call I had, and I was kind of like taken aback. So I teach this kind of three-part framework for communication, and one piece of communication that you just cannot escape is that you have to have respect for the person you are communicating with, even if they drive you freaking crazy. Every one of their beliefs you think is nonsense. You don't see eye to eye in anything. If you want to have better communication, you have to start with respect. I'll never forget. I asked her. I was like, "Look." I was explaining that to her. I was like, "Can you find just one thing that you respect about this other person? Just one thing. Is she a great mom? Is she a good friend? Does she work hard, even if it's maybe not on the stuff that you want her to see? Is there one thing that you can respect about this human being?" And this woman looks at me and she goes, "Nope." And I was like, "Well, I don't think this is going to get any better for you." And so a big thing for me is that leaders have to go first. I totally agree with Mike on the mutual respect piece is just critical. I totally agree with Mike that the mutual respect piece is deteriorating. And so the question I want to pose, because I am really interested in this, and I work with a lot of online influencers, and I work with my sister who's online as well, and a part of our business model there is her on Instagram. And so these things happen in the world, and sometimes it can feel like, what do we do? Do we address them? Do we become political? Do we kind of lead in that area? It will affect our business. Is that okay? And at the same time, we got a team. Like people got to eat, people got to pay rent. So we have to make those decisions. So the question I have for you guys is, what do you think? Like, what should maybe just the average person or the average guy like us be doing, be saying? There's this idea from psychology called locus of control. And people who have an internal locus of control, meaning they focus on their own shit. They focus on, I'm going to be a good human. I'm going to help in my small sphere. I'm going to focus on the things I can control, versus an external locus of control, which is, the world is chaotic, I'm drowning, and they focus more on the external stimulus. People with an internal locus of control, they're happier, they're more effective, they're better leaders. They even get sick less often when they focus on their immediate circle. So what is that line? This is my question. Long way to get there. But what is that line between focusing on my own shit and an internal locus of control and being a leader in my very small circle versus all this chaos going on in the world? And sometimes it does feel like just not saying anything and just, I'll just focus on my little sandbox over here. Almost feels like I'm checking out. I'm burying my head in the sand. What is that line between, all right, I'm gonna lead on this. This is my stance on this. This is when I should speak up. This is when I should focus on my own shit. That's my question for the group.
Mm. Yeah, this is a tough one, right? Because I think that's where a lot of people are arguing about this right now. Like I think a lot of people, let's say on the left, are saying we've crossed the line, that we need to all start paying attention, and they would call that the authoritarian line. And I think
Mhm.
in your world, let's say Danny, and I know Mike too, of the three of us, I'm the only one who's kind of not in the corporate space. Mike and Danny kind of are, although Mike has been an entrepreneur. They're both in the entrepreneurial space as well. But in that world, I think we also have to look at how people cross the line in our circles, right? So it's like our family, then where we work, than in our community, than in our sort of country. But if we take sort of the thing that people are talking about now, is this idea of authoritarianism and moving towards, let's say, Germany prior to World War II. A lot of the left is saying that. A lot of the right, is just not there and sees it more as hysteria. And so for me, your question was, where do we draw the line? So if we take that idea first, let's just go global country. To me, I draw the line when I start to see, and there is a debate to be had here, where people's freedoms and autonomy begin to be taken from them, when people are singled out for being a particular way, and there's this team of, we are the real people and they are the bad people, and we are ultra nationalism that's moving towards fascism. And as that starts to go and you start seeing other people's rights being infringed, or the things that make our society work start to be degraded, that's why I see the line start to fall down. Now let's come in a little bit in the corporate world. Same kind of thing. When you have a leader and when you have practices that start degrading the cohesiveness, the inclusivity, the integration, the holism inside a business, that's when the line starts to go. Inside of a family, same thing. Inside of ourselves, and this gets to your point, where it's like locus of control, same thing. So I do think it trickles outward, but I do start to think once you start seeing divisive, dehumanizing behavior against others in a way that creates this us against them mentality, and it starts to bleed over into our leadership. It's always been there, but it starts to bleed over into the government, into our leadership, or the corporate
Yeah.
culture, or the
Yeah.
family culture. That's when the line starts to be drawn. I think we all could agree that's happened. We just
Yeah.
we just start to debate on why it's happened. And I'll say one more thing here in regards to some of the things, because I want to be inclusive of everybody. I think that we need to bring everyone to the table. And one of the things that I think happens is when you feel bullied, and this is where I throw this to back to you all, when you feel bullied for any length of time. So let's take both the left and the right in our country, right? So let's take the right first. Let's say you're, a white male American living in the middle of Alabama, working hard, lower class, middle class person, doing your thing, and you are demonized for your work. And it's all about the male white patriarchy and all of this sort of talk. You start to feel like you're being bullied. And when you start to feel like you're being bullied, what do? You go look for your own bully to the people you think are bullying you. And then let's take the left. So if you feel like on the left, you're a person of color living in the inner city somewhere. Of course, we're doing gross generalizations here, and you feel like the entire history of the country that you are a part of has kind of kept you down for any length of time, or for a period of time, a history. You start to go, okay, I feel bullied and I want to, get and vote for my bully, right? Um, and this is what happens. Instead of going, these people also suffer, and like I suffer, and speaking to common humanity. So that's how I would see that. And I want to see from your perspectives, if you feel like people are capable of seeing people's common humanity when this happens, right? There's no accident for me. And I'm sorry I'm talking a lot, but I'll say one more thing. For me, here's the solution for me. You talked about locus of control. I simply go, you know what? I'm not going to, if I don't want to see demonizing, divisive dehumanization, I won't do that. I won't villainize someone on the left or villainize someone on the right just because they don't agree with me. Because if I do that, it will extend. So I do see the outer world as being an internal reflection of me. So I'll shut up there. I know it's a big, long-winded thing, and see, I said a lot. So we'll see where you want to go with that. And I don't know what you would say to that, Mike. I guess we'll let you go first, and then Danny jump in. But whoever wants to take off on that, I don't know if that helps you begin to understand my point of view.
No, I mean, I think that you said a lot. There's a lot that I was just logging in my brain. I'm trying to bring it back to the topic of the chat, right? Just leadership. I guess I'll answer a question with a question. Rather than, to your point, rather than point fingers or point blame, I'll just add, like what would you want? What would you? How would you feel? What would you wish our leader of our country could do from a leadership perspective? How would he behave? How would he be?
Yeah, go ahead, Danny. I definitely have an answer, but I've been talking a lot. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can jump in, Jade, and just answer. I mean, I think the
Mm,
first thing that came to mind is a discussion we had on this Sunday session a couple weeks ago. We let it off with that quote you had by Elon Musk, Jade, around
mm,
like empathy is the biggest problem in society, or something ridiculous along those lines. And I do think that is ridiculous. I don't think we have a problem with too much empathy at all. And I think so that would be probably foundation number one, empathy. And I think foundation number two would be going back to Mike kicking it off with respect. It has to start with exactly what you said, Jay. There has to start with this common humanity. We do this
mm,
exercise in this workshop that I do based off this communication framework called Johari's window. And we do this exercise where we kind of like basically Johari's window is like there's stuff that I know about me that you guys don't know about me. And there's stuff that you guys know about me that I don't know about myself. So what you know about me that I don't see are my blind spots. What I know about me that you guys don't know is kind of like my shadow, my secrets that I hold. And what we find, we go around and like people kind of open up. Here's something that you don't know about me that I know about myself. And it's always very personal in nature. And what you see is this common thread of suffering. Someone has a problem with their aging parents. Someone has a problem with their child. Someone has a problem with their health. Everyone is suffering. And you see this palpable shift in the room where everyone is present, everyone's really compassionate and empathetic for one another, and it's a really powerful like jumping off point into other conversations, and people really start to open up from there. So all that is the recognition that, hey, oh, you're human too. It's your human rule, Jade. It's like it's starting from the foundation that we are all human, and then you can go to coaching, or then you can go to whatever other avenue you want to go. But those two came to mind really quick, and I think that would solve a lot of woes from my vantage point. It is empathy and respect, and these are two things. Actually, I do think can be. I think you asked this question, Jade. Can this even happen when there's that much tension? I go, yeah, it's a practice like anything else. It's like that old research, that early self-development research on gratitude practices, how it starts to refilter how you see the world. You're looking out for things to be grateful for. It's the same thing with respect or empathy. It's a muscle that you have to practice and strengthen. But those would probably be my two that just come to mind. I don't know if
yeah.
you guys had, Mike, did you have one ready to go when you asked that question? Like, what would you like to see? I'll pass it back to you, and then we'll let Jay kind of round it up.
You know what's funny is in my self development work, Jade's called me out for adult temper tantrums. Like I've done these adult temper tantrums, and I own it. I admit it. I have. Like I've sat in his living room and I've said things I regret, and I realize it comes from a place of just of immaturity. And I can't help but notice that like some of these adult temper tantrums that I've witnessed people have recently, whether it's a failure to acknowledge or issue or an apology, be held accountable for actions or words, dismissive behavior, calling people out on social media, using a platform like name calling. It's like we look at these things that are happening. It's like these are adult temper tantrums. Like I think a leader needs to have accountability, needs to be able to, like I said, hold that space to even admit wrong. I don't think no one's perfect. So I think that's a huge humility in leadership. Yeah, I'll say those things.
Let me just double tap on those. I wrote this article. I got a great response about, I think this is my wife's superpower. She both does two things that you said my in the humility realm is one, she apologized. She's like, yesterday, I'm sorry, that was a little fucked up. That is becoming more and more rare. People taking ownership of their behavior. I even saw this week, with what happened in the news, and they go to Trump, they go, do you want to apologize? He goes, absolutely not. I don't have
Yeah,
nothing to apologize for. So the willingness to apologize is not weakness, that's ownership. And then also on the other end, willingness to forgive, like not holding shit over people's head is an aspect of humility too. So when my wife goes, hey, that was my bad yesterday, I can't next week be like, remember that thing you did? I can't hold that over her head. I have to forgive and literally let that shit go and not hold it overhead, not keep score. So I think I just kind of sparked in my head when you're talking about that, Mike. I think it's becoming more and more rare, and I think it's a big problem. But I'll throw it over to Jade now too, because I know you have some things that you probably want to add to this, but I doubt you disagree with those, Jade, like what me and Mike said: humility, empathy, respect, just common human decency. I guess we'll start there.
human
That was kind of
decency, human
Yeah.
decency.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was
And
kind of our
I
take.
really I actually really love what you said about Kelsey and what Mike said about himself. That those two traits are incredibly rare. So Mike saying, I've thrown adult temper tantrums. There are things I'm embarrassed of. I'm working on myself. Kelsey being able to say, I'm sorry or I messed up. Like this is to me the quintessential trait of a mature human being. And so one of the things I posted about today was this idea that, we humans, we all have child development. We don't come in as fully formed adults. We are children, then we're teenagers, then we're young adults. And unfortunately for us, I think we would all agree if you really study self-development, most people die in their 80s at best as teenagers, stunted in their maturity. And by the way, not because they're bad. This isn't to say that they're bad or dumb or anything like that. What is to say is that we all suffer and we have parents who weren't perfect and we have life events that happen, all of us, right? Brown people, white people, everyone in between, right? We all have our suffering. And great leaders like people like Nelson Mandela or people like Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi, one of the things that they did is they spoke to not their unique nature or their group's unique nature. They spoke to humanity. And what they did is they said, hey, we all suffer and we all are in this together, and let's build each other up. We're not asking for you to be excluded. We're just asking for us to be included. And so one of the things that happens here is whenever you see it, you ask the question, when do you draw the line? Well, when a group of people starts to exclude instead of wanting to include. And by the
Yeah.
way, whenever a group is excluded, what will they do? They will feel like they need to go get their bully. And so, to me, what we need to do is we need to remember that we are human first before we are genders, before we are races, right? We are human. What we tend to do is go, well, let's talk about our maleness or our femaleness. Let's talk about our brownness or our whiteness. Let's talk about our political selves. And when a leader does this and buys into that, what ends up happening is all the culture level people will follow and they'll schism. They'll either follow them or they'll say, nope, I reject that. And that creates the problem. And by the way, I don't want to both sides this, but you can find examples of this across leadership for decades, regardless of who was in control, from basket of deplorables to, uh, rapists and criminals, right? Like this is the thing, now it's the left, like it's some bad word, or the right, as it's some bad word. What we need to do is reject that. And I do think this is what you were speaking to when we were texting this morning, Mike. I think what we were both tapping into is what is the deal with the level of immaturity that people want to do that? And the deal is they have never learned basic emotional maturity. And this isn't a call out. This is the same for me. I've struggled through this and had to grow up. Mike admits to struggling through it and had to grow up. I know you, Danny, have struggled through it and had to grow up. What's wrong with all of us just saying, look, we're imperfect humans. We're all humans. We're just trying to grow and get better instead of being like, I'm better than you because I have this belief system or that belief system. It's not the belief system that's the problem in my mind as much as it is the idea that my belief system is better than your belief system that becomes the problem.
Yeah. Dan, you want to say something? I'm going to pass it
Go
back. You
for it.
want? I can go. All right. So
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I'm actually trying to exercise my listening brain and because man, like this last week has been really tough for me. Like I'm not gonna lie to you. Just because I've always had my opinions. I think the first thing people I'd like to share is that when you're opinionated and you get triggered, I want to figure out where's that. Well, why am I being triggered? I had to do I had to read. I had to watch. I couldn't just go to social media and post with my thoughts and opinions without doing some research. And I really had to I dove in and I just long story short, like even this like alternate halftime performance, it's like I'm just like, do you know about this, Jay? Do you know about this?
Yeah. Well, I want you to tell me because I feel like, so what happened? Was it that Bad Bunny, who's a Puerto Rican American, and speaks mainly Spanish and sings in Spanish? People are reacting negatively to the fact, like I think I heard something like they're like, I want an alternate halftime show because he's not American enough? Is that what's
Basically,
happening? Okay.
yes, essentially. And I'm just like, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna say something you've told me, right? It's like, this whole team level thing. It's just like I don't understand it, and I struggle to accept it because at the end of the day, we're all on team human. You say this to me, like we're just team human being, not team red, team blue, team this, team that. And going back to the theme of the chat, like leadership had a chance and opportunity to unite people around a worldwide event. The Super Bowl is a worldwide event. It's not just an American event, right? Especially as the NFL is trying to become an international sport, with their global games. And this the divisive nature of just having an alternate halftime performance, it just blows my mind. It really
Let
does.
me ask you this, Mike. What do you think? Because I know you and Danny pay more attention to this than I do. But I think Danny, I think you're the most into. I don't know. I mean, I'm not into it anymore. I'm not into the NFL anymore. I think you two are more into it than me. But I'm curious, what do you think this is? So, do you think it's really racism the way people say it is? Is it just people being racist, or do you think it's more like people feeling excluded? Like, what do you think's going on there?
I don't know. I listed this podcast that I really enjoy. That is, I don't even know if it's a good podcast, but it's these parents that are super right and these kids that are super left, and they talk and they're like from Oklahoma. They're like everyday people. And you just start listening to this podcast and you just go, that's some crazy shit. Like that's pretty much what I say the whole time. Like either way, whoever's talking, I'm like, that's some crazy shit. Like
Mm,
that's a wild thing to say. But then over time you start to understand that they're just responding to what their team should be. Like every question that's asked on this podcast that I listen to, I already know what the other person is going to say, that they're going to align exactly with their team. And I've been doing this thing in my life, and I'll call out my father, who I love and respect, but is very politically charged at the moment. And I go, look, man, you're too predictable. Yeah, I know exactly what you're going to say. You fall in line with your team every single time. Until you can give me a little criticism of your own team, I'm out of the discussion. One criticism of your own team, or if you want to give a positive attribute to the other team, because you can't just you're not a one or a zero. There's got to be nuance here, otherwise I don't want to talk to you. So I bring this up because I don't know that it's just overt racism. I see it more as like it's just reactivity to what my team said I should fall in
mm.
line. I don't think most people give a shit who is performing at the halftime show. I think most people are shitting out their nachos at the halftime show. I don't think it matters much there at all. I don't think it's overtly racist. I think it's team based and it's predictable and it's very reactive. It's not, I like this distinction between reacting and responding. Responding implies intention. Everything you're saying, Mike, thoughtfulness, a little research perhaps. That's
Yeah, yeah,
responsiveness. On the other
yeah.
side is reactivity. So I think it's just accelerated reactivity, but that's my take. I don't
Yeah,
know if you
you.
had
The
different
the
take,
last thing
Mike.
I'll add
Tell
to
me.
that, the last thing I'll add, Danny hit the nail on the head. This team mentality, both sides. No, I mean, I like to believe I'm moderately, firmly in the middle of things, and I like to keep an open mind. And it's hard at times. It really is because the polarity of where we're at in our world is just crazy. Like to me, it's just nuts. Like I don't. Jade, you're way more. Oh, hi guys, hi, that's my phone. You're way more educated than I am. You're way more educated than I am. Dude, you're the. I want to just you're much more knowledgeable when it comes to a lot of this stuff. I'm really curious to know, in your opinion, like I know you can't tell, you're not a fortune teller, but it's like where do we go from here? Like
Mm.
how do we how do we at any point reduce the polarity of where we're at? Like how do we bring it back in?
Yeah. This is a hard question, right? Like, I think a lot of us are asking this. The answer, no one's going to like the answer. In fact, everyone who's on live right now, I don't think is going to like this answer because it's unsatisfactory. You guys still got me, by the way? It's like, can you
Yeah,
hear me?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Um, it basically is this. Uh, Within ourselves, we have got to cultivate, and this is why people don't like this, because it starts with self. We have got to cultivate being able to hold a level of maturity and regulation within ourselves and to be able to recognize. So, for example, with Mike, right? I know you have a story that informs everything you think and believe. I know Danny has a story that informs everything he thinks and believes. Jade has a story. Every human I meet has a story that informs why they believe what they believe. And to me, I go, let me understand my story so that I can understand others. Now, I know that's philosophical, but let me show you how this breaks down. So, when I'm listening to the news, right, and I'm listening to one side or the other, I go, this is just culture level talk, to Danny's point, right? When he says, Dad, you're too predictable. So I just go, okay, this is culture level speak. And I understand why, because we have needs for acceptance and belonging. And so we just go, what is everyone else thinking? And what do people who are in my team and believe closer to my internal story saying? So I'll just go that direction. And this to me is the problem. But if we start questioning our story and start going, okay, well, my story is just a story. There are lots of different beliefs out there, and I need to not act as if my story is the only one, the best one. This self awareness that opens me up. But here's the problem: people who are more base level, and we don't and I don't want that term to seem negative. It just means that in our development as children, we have needs for safety and security, and if those needs are not met, we walk around in a world a little bit more fearful. And that decrement then creates an adult who's walking around in an adult body, but has a fearful, childlike brain in their story that basically is very susceptible to, these people are going to get you, right? The white person is going to get you, or the brown person is going to get you. And everyone's taking advantage, and be an individual and take care of yourself. And those base level types will move in that direction. And then the culture level types are influenced by that. So now here's the point of what I'm saying. If we can move to our next level selves and go, I am not going to buy into my story and the fear anymore, and I'm going to see that everyone suffers. This is the next level way. And once I start doing that and meet people from that perspective, now I can influence the culture level masses to come over to me. What that means is when me and Danny and Mike and all of you listening sit around with our family and friends and have these discussions, rather than yelling and screaming or parroting each other and just speaking to the choir, we began to look at our assumptions and try to see it from the other person's point of view. That level of maturity within ourselves bleeds over into other people. And that's the only place we could start. Now, I'll say one more thing, because people then go, you know what, Danny, you know what, Mike, you know what, Jade, like that's never going to work. And I'm like, it's the only thing that actually does. Because if we can't be mature within ourselves and we're going to be reactive and scream and yell, then we're going to turn people off. And that doesn't mean we can't go out and march. That doesn't mean we can't post on our social media. That doesn't mean we can't stand up for what's right. What it means is that when we're standing up for what we believe is right, we're not being the thing we hate. We're not saying you people on the left are horrible or you people on the right are horrible. We're basically saying, I believe this and I want to include all of us. And when we do that, we start to reject leaders who don't hold that same way of being.
No pushback, except that it's a lot easier said than done to analyze your own story and call out where your story is flawed. There's two levels. There's two levels to self awareness. One is just the understanding, and then the second part is kind of the acceptance. Like, so I used to say when I first moved in with Jade and my sister Jill back in the day, I'll never forget, like, just trying to find my own voice. So there's two steps to self-awareness. One is understanding what's going on in my head, and then two is getting it out of my mouth. So the first practice was like, all right, let me just see what I think, what I understand. And then I would just say shit and it would come out and it would be weird. And I would just say, that is not what I meant. That is not what, like, there was some disconnection. There's two levels to self-awareness, and it's very just difficult. So it's difficult to find your story. And to Mike's point, you probably know you have a flawed story when there's an emotional charge. So every time you look at someone's face, you get annoyed, you get frustrated, you get angry. There's probably a story there. Or if you're seeing results in your life that are just not working for you, whatever kind of is coming out in your life over and over in these patterns, you probably have a flawed story. So I have no pushback. I would just add, maybe I will go back to my thing of locus of control. I was reading this morning, there's this researcher who looks at effective nonviolent protest. And what she found was that it takes about 3.5% of the population to get political change. That's the number, 3.5%. So I made this a little pithy saying of like, be responsible for your 3.5%. So showing up, if you work for a corporation, you're showing up and you're making the best possible environment for your team. You're showing up at home with a different type of energy. You volunteer in your community like that. To me, I think is far more powerful than it gets credit for. And focusing on making your small 3.5% like the best it can possibly be, I do think that has cascading effects. And we know that these small moments with people who are positive in our life last for years. Like one interaction with someone who really positively influences you can have this cascading effect for years. So that might be too naive, too idealistic, but it feels doable. Just to be like, let me just focus on my sphere. Let me focus on internal locus of control, whatever that means, whether it is speaking out of social media or not, or doing good in your family or not. I'll finish right with this story about, you guys remember the Chilean miners who got stuck? Maybe 15 years ago, 2011, 2012, 33 Chilean miners. I was reading this kind of what happened down there. And supposedly right when it crashed in, they all everybody panicked and freaked out, as you would, trapped in a mine, like searching for exit. It was chaos. And then everyone started to calm down a little bit and they all started coming together. And the main leader down there walks into the center of the group and everybody's kind of ready for him to bark out orders. Here's what we're going to do. That dude takes off his white construction hat, which I guess everyone else has the orange one to signal that he's the leader, and goes, everything that's happened before this is now erased. We are all on the same level now, and we have one goal, and that is to get out of here alive. And that set the whole tone for those 55 days that those guys were down there. Everyone contributed in different ways. Some looked for water. Some continued to search for escape routes. They built communication systems. They built these things when someone was freaking out. Every day someone freaked out, and every day someone in the group recentered them. Like, it's going to be okay. We're going to focus. We're going to get out of here. Let's stay together as a unit. So everybody in that group became a leader, and that's my ultimate message. Like, I do think, I know, Jay, we see this a little bit differently. I do think you can lead from any seat and make an impact in your 3.5%. So now I'm talking too much, but I would agree with you, Jade. I would refocus on my internal locus of control. I am a believer in that. And then I'm passing it to Mike. I'm done. No,
I thought that was really well said, dude. I think that our political appetite in this country is pretty extreme. People like to get on their teams. They like to do their things. But at the end of the day, we're all in Team America. We're all Team Human, right? And I think that what you said about the miners, like he put his hat on, and like, okay, now we're in this together. I think once the voting's done and we elect our president-elect and they get into the office, we're all in Team America. We're like let's get on the same team now. And I just don't think we do that. And I think that's a reflection of our leadership and the belief that he's again, I don't want to make this about this. I'm sorry, guys, but like it's hard with his behavior and the behavior that I'm witnessing and the behavior that he exhibits to believe that he's on Team Human. And I think that's it's a top-down thing from that standpoint.
By the way, I don't think, I know we're all a little bit different here, but Mike, I don't think there's a problem saying, like, and to me, I don't think there's a problem at all with saying, I don't think Donald Trump is a good leader. I don't actually believe that most of his people who have voted for him and followed him actually believe in their heart of hearts he's a good leader. What I think they want and what he represents for them is a sort of, things have been broken for me. America is moving in a direction that I didn't like, and he seemed to represent that. What I think happens, though, and this is a psychological principle, I think what happens, though, once they vote for him, now, of course, there's always going to be a group of people who like the chaos like what he does, and they're going to be in that base level thing. I think just most people who voted for him would probably say, this isn't all good, but I still like his policies. I think what will happen along the way, though, is they'll see, and this is the big debate, right? You can't necessarily argue with that. He's done some interesting things. Like one of the things I love is this thing he did with, the child tax credit, where you give every child in America money and invest it for them, so when they retire, that they have some money. I think he's done some decent things in certain segments of the geopolitics. I think though what happens is because he's unstable and not, I think, the most inclusive human being, what people do is they separate that side of him with his politics. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, I believe to all these people that they've made an intelligent decision based on what their internal stories. And I don't judge them for that. I just would argue, and we'll see who's right or wrong for those of you who think he is a good leader. I just go, the way that you show up and your divisiveness and dehumanization supersedes and trumps your politics. And we'll see that time and time again, right? I'm not going to compare him to Hitler, but I will say Hitler was an environmentalist. Hitler did a lot of really interesting things, but his morality and his inability to be inclusive and integrative and holistic in the way he ruled his country not only
Yeah.
destroyed his country, but the world. And I
Yeah.
do think there's a danger here. By the way, I think let's not make this about Donald Trump. There have been some similar leaders on the left. The problem is we're moving in a direction internally in the way that we deal with politics that the next leader that is immoral or not inclusive is going to come from the left. So it's got to stop somewhere. I mean, people who can all say, well, I voted against this because of immorality. The problem, though, happens because the hypocrisy. Danny was talking about like certain aspects of things. Once you make a vote, what we need to understand is people who change their mind, I respect them more than anybody. They are the most powerful humans in the world. I just go, I have nothing but respect for someone who goes, you know what? I thought this way. I thought the policies would matter, and I've changed my mind. And I would love to see people on the left do that with their leaders, and I would love to see people on the right do that with Donald Trump. I don't think he's a good
Yeah.
leader. I think that changing your mind is really important. I don't think that we want to demonize the groups that voted for
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
that leader, though. I think
Yeah.
that's part of the issue. But I think it's important we speak our opinion. I would love to have someone here who was a little bit more pro that, because I would like to understand. But I really do doubt that many people, except the 20%, 25% who are just base level types, like his behavior. Right? I just think they miss the fact that his behavior cannot be separated from his policies, and his behavior will eventually cause the problems that we're
Yeah.
seeing,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. I love you both. I got to get bounce, but thank you for having me. I really appreciate you guys for letting me vocalize my opinions, and thank you for being there for me during this frustrating week and weekend. So I love you guys. I'll see you soon. All right.
Thanks
Love
for
you,
coming
brother.
on, Mike. Good to see you, man.
You too, bud.
Let
See
me
you,
ask
brother.
you, Jay, what's something you've changed your mind on recently
Mm. Well,
or
I
in the
think I've
past X
changed.
years?
Yeah, I think that I have changed my mind on Donald Trump a little bit. I was never a fan of Donald Trump. I followed him. I'm still not a fan of Donald Trump, but I followed him for many years. Back in the 90s, I used to see him on the Howard Stern show all the time. And I really did not like his, I thought he was an arrogant, brash, narcissistic person then I never would have imagined that I would be, I was talking about him back then, because I lived in New York City at the time. But what I have done, I think I've changed my mind on, some of the ways that I look at some of the policies that people say they like, in terms of, for me, for example, I used to be someone who was, I would say, leaned a little bit more, um, socialist in my ways. Like, we shouldn't, capitalism is a problem across the board would have been maybe my thing. And part of the reason I was is because it doesn't prioritize human thriving. But then as talking to other people, I basically go and learning a little bit more, I go, oh, capitalism is by far the best system. Now and by the way, then I go, oh, but I still want to prioritize human thriving. So now I have a better. The interesting thing is now, because I've opened up to that idea, I have a better solution. And as I keep open, I think and my better solution is, oh, capitalism plus human thriving. Like, what if we put profit right alongside human thriving, right? What if we put the idea of power not as a bad thing, so long as it's in service of purpose? And so I think I've changed my mind a lot in being more integrative. How can I take this idea I don't like, take the good, or this person I don't necessarily like, but look for things that they're doing that are actually not bad ideas and incorporate them into my ideas. Nobody is all bad. No one is all good. What we do is we demonize everything. So I have changed my mind a lot in my way that I think politics should work now in an integrative way, similar to integrative medicine, right?
Hmm.
I just go, I want to see human thriving alongside profit. I think the left maybe goes a little too far in, let's just prioritize, everyone who's not making it, ignoring the fact that some people don't want to work. I think the right is a little bit too individualistic. I think most of us who are in the middle basically would say, we need to start thinking more integrative. I'm curious for you, where have you changed your mind?
Yeah, I've been asking a lot of people this question just to see if people can sort of identify it. I guess in this realm, the way 2020 unfolded around COVID and some of the things that I believed at the time, like around the effectiveness of masks, the idea, like I think I was a little bit more blind trust
Mm,
of institutions, and I think now I am skeptical. I think it's gone too far where we can't just say institutions are useless and untrustworthy, but I'm far
mm,
more skeptical than I used to be. I think I was definitely on the line of like everyone should get vaccinated. It's called mass when what's the tipping when it tips into like herd
mhm,
immunity. I was like, yeah, everybody should get vaccinated, but in the same breath, then and this may be a flawed argument, Jay, so you tell me, but it kind of falls into where the left goes, my body, my choice with abortion.
yeah,
The right kind of wants to police that, and then opposite. It seemed opposite with this vaccination thing. The left was like, no, it's now it's your body, now it's my choice. So I think
yeah,
I've cooled off on that a lot
mm,
around vaccinations. I've gone a little bit more libertarian in the sense of like, look, it's your show, it's your life. I understand that there are cascading effects, like we affect other people that were around. I get that. So it's sort of what you're saying with the integrative thinking. Both things can be true, but I think I had a blind trust of institutions like the CDC. That and then you look back, you just go, there was a lot of weird shit, a lot of weird recommendations coming out of there. So I think I hold a little bit of more of a healthy skepticism without overcorrecting, because I do believe in the power of institutions
yeah,
as well. So I'm more skeptical I used to be. I'm not just blind, like especially around the vaccination piece. I was a little bit more like everyone should do it, and I'm just like, nah,
yeah,
I don't know that I believe that anymore. Especially how
yeah.
quickly I thought it got rushed out, even though I know that technology was there to some degree. But yeah, I think that's where I've changed my mind recently.
Yeah, the way I see it is, and I don't know how all of you listening see this, but I do see pendulums, right? Like, because to me, I go, people re- get reactive to these pendulum swings, and they want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. To me, I'm
Right.
like, there were a lot of problems, and there are a lot of problems in our institutions. However, those institutions were built up over time, and a lot works. I think more works than doesn't work. But the human nature, and by the way, it's normal, so I don't blame anyone for thinking this, is to go, you know what, it's too political. Special interests have got involved. And then the base level types go to conspiracy theories. And the interesting thing about conspiracy theories, there's always a measure of truth in a conspiracy theory, so you can find aspects of that. But then the pendulum swings, and they go tear it all down. The problem with that is it never works. And so what we have to do is uh, really regulate this pendulum swing. So I too, like you, kind of go, and I've always thought, like, to me, I this idea of being evidence based, follow the science. Well, unfortunately for us, the science has been contaminated somewhat. And what we want to do, though, is not throw away the institution. What we want to do is go hold people accountable for when they allow that contamination within themselves, right? So this is what's really weird to me, is this thing that's happened where we're like, let's tear down the institution because people are being contaminated by the special interest. And guess what happened as soon as we did that? The very people we thought, and this is my belief system, the very people we thought were going to do that are now abusing the systems even more because the checks and balances are completely gone, right? And so what should have happened is a tinkering and tweaking of the checks and balances, a accounting of who is being taking advantage of the system and an enforcement of that. Because what we continue to miss as humans is that when we tear it all down, what ends up happening is we almost always replace it with people who are going to take even more advantage and people who are no longer experts, right? So the idea is keep the experts who are in their integrity, get rid of the experts who are not. Instead of what we did is tear things down. And now we've got people who I regard as not experts at all. And that to me is a big problem. And I do fear that the pendulum will swing back the other way, and then even more, issues happen. And so we just don't seem to figure out that these wide pendulum swings are problematic, and it's because immature people cannot hold nuanced arguments. They just can't. Immature people can't admit they're wrong. Immature people can't apologize. Immature people can't forgive. And an immature community and an immature corporate organization and an immature country is packed with immature people. And I think we have slowly but surely packed our government, packed lots of our corporations with immature people. And to me, I go, we're not policing that. We're not holding ourselves accountable. Here's what it would be, Danny. I'm curious what you say about it. It's like, to me, what's wrong with just being like, you know what? I made this vote. That was a mistake. And me looking at you and being like, I don't blame you, man. This is a complicated world. I mean, I could see why you voted in that direction. But instead of doubling down when you see it's a mistake, like what's wrong with us as humans where we double down, we see it's a mistake, we know it's a mistake, and instead we go, nope, I'm sticking with my person. Like at
Hmm.
this point, given what's happening in the world, I think, and I really do trust this. Some of you maybe send me a message, yell at me, scream at me if you're listening to this or whatever. But I do think that the most of the people in the middle are going to move away from this because it's a disaster. But I do think you should be ready that 20 to 30% of people will simply stay because they're too immature to admit the problems that this created. And to me, I just go, we shouldn't shame anybody either because none of us truly know. We did an experiment. I don't think it's working out very well. Um, let's see what happens. Like, let's admit when we're wrong.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with the maturation spectrum or process of life of developmental psychology and how you said it earlier. Most people die in their 80s as teenagers, essentially, and I like that a lot. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. So I think maybe we wrap this discussion up, Jade, by being like, all right, well, how do you move up that ladder? I really love, I'm a big Mark Manson fan, and he laid this out in a way that I that was really just an easy way for my mind to grasp this. He goes, look, the child does whatever he or she wants. That's what a child is. I have an impulse, I'll respond. I want the ice cream, I'm going to eat it. Be damned about consequences. Then we start to learn a little bit like, okay, if I eat the ice cream, I make mom mad, and that's not good. I stole the ice cream and I don't want to make mom mad. So then we get into adolescence, and that's the negotiating area. That's what you would call, I think you would call your culture level, where it's like it is a little bit more team based. It's more of I do things as an ends to some other means. I
Mhm.
don't eat the ice cream now so that my mom doesn't get mad. And on the surface, these are good developmental skills. We should these are considerations as where compassion starts to develop. This is where identity starts to develop a little bit as well. And then the third level, of course, is the adult. And the adult is the filter that Mark Manson uses. The adult does things as means to its own end. I am honest because it's the right thing to do. I have integrity for the sake of having integrity. These are where it basically speaks to our values and the values that we develop. And that is the adult in the room. I do the right thing simply because it is the right thing. I say this simply because that is the right thing to say or do. So I like this framework of maturation and moving towards that. So the way I see that is like, yeah, getting very clear on what are my values, and then how can I show up in my little world that I live in more in line with those values. And that to me is how we start to move into adulthood. And we have these kind of kind of cascading or rippling effects into the people that we work with or interact with. But so that would be kind of my takeaway is like, yeah, I like this maturation process. It's really about being an adult is when you start to do things for when they're at the ends of their own means. And so that's kind of how I see it, Jade. I don't know, how do people move up that ladder? If this is the problem, it's like we're just not moving up this maturation process, or we're not moving into being a next level human. What are the to-dos or the protocol? And I know I like to oversimplify stuff, but I just, for people like me, it's really useful to be like, okay, like I like this, and I'm digging what you're saying, but what do I do, man? Like it feels so big and chaotic. I don't even know how to begin or what I should be focusing on. So I'll reflect that to you and we can kind of close it out there if you want.
Yeah, I love it, and I agree with that 100%. I think if we're, obviously it's a complex argument. You and I could do this next week and take up on this if we want, but I think exactly that. And then I will leave people with three things that I look at. I call them, the nature principles or the God principles. If you look around nature, and we talked about this last time, and I'll give an example. If the king of the jungle, right, we call it the lion. The lion is the king of the jungle. The idea is, imagine a rogue lion who goes, you know what, I'm the king of the jungle and I want to be all powerful and my jungle's better than every other jungle. And because my jungle is better, I'm just going to take over all other jungles and I'm going to subjugate all other species. And I'm going to kill the beavers and I'm going to beat up the bees and I'm going to put everyone in their place because I am the most powerful. What ends up happening when you chase power this way is what's going to happen is that lion relies on that ecosystem and that environment. And so when he or she begins to try to control and be like, I'm the most powerful, he destroys his ecosystem because he destroys the beavers and destroys the bees. And what happens is this violates inclusivity. So that's principle number one. Principle number two is integration. And principle number three is holism. And so if you're this lion, you have to essentially go, okay, I need to include everybody. That's inclusivity. Because I must, because if I don't, then I am going to eventually destroy myself. We've seen this in history, throughout history. It's throughout history. The latest incarnation was Nazi Germany. That's what happened. Integration then is the next step up where you essentially go, okay, not only am I not going to exclude everybody, but I am going to try to integrate all good ideas. I'm not going to throw out Donald Trump's ideas and all the people on the right, and I'm not going to throw out all the people on the left ideas. I'm going to take the best ideas from any place to make my ecosystem the best, right? So I'm going to listen to the bees and I'm going to listen to the beavers. And if they have a bad idea, I'm going to throw it out, but I'm not going to pretend like there's no good ideas coming from these places. So that's the integration piece. And the holism piece, the next piece is the harmony piece. And then I'm going to go, let me put these together in a way that creates a vibrant, viable ecosystem in harmony. And I do think, as imperfect as the United States has been, it was moving in that direction in fits and starts. I think what happened was the left went a little too far, the right went a little too far. Then once that happens, and people start getting scared, the left goes even farther, the right goes even further. We start to violate holism and integration and inclusivity. So I would say, yes, exactly what you said. Then I'd also say, I'd sum it up like this. If you want to these three principles, to live by these three principles, it's very easy. Just remember one thing. When I think about a solution, I include myself and others simultaneously. I won't be the lion that's going to beat everybody else up. I'm going to be someone who considers everyone because I must. And if I don't, I end up harming myself. And this, to me, you can see it in nature. You can see it in ancient philosophy. You can see it in whatever religion you want to choose. It's all there. We just don't live by these principles.
And that all to do all that, it requires one of these skills that I'm coming to believe, like to bring it to leadership again, is one of these skills that you need if you're going to be a leader is discernment. Being able to go through all those ideas you talk about, Jade, the bees and the beavers, and being able to filter, is that a good idea or not? Is that something that's going to help or not? Is this a good story to take on or not? And I think that's an underrated skill to develop those things. You have to be able to discern whether or not it's a good idea in the first place. And I think it's a lot easier. That's why teams are so powerful. It's a lot easier to default whatever the team says this, I'm on board. It's quick, it's reactive, but it's also solid where it's like, at least I have a stance now. I know exactly what I believe, but really effective leaders are really good at discerning. I work with a lot of people in corporations. They go through a 360 review and they take the reviews so personally, and you start to pull back the onion a little bit, and you're like, who is this person who gave you this feedback? And they go, well, they don't really work with me. They just they worked with me once. And I'm like, well, let's be a little discerning. They don't know you. They don't know how you behave. They don't have your best. They just had to do this. Obviously, they were thrown into the bucket. They don't work with you on the day to day. So we had to be discerning and be like, that's in the trash bin. I'll take what's you. It's the Bruce Lee principle. Take what's useful, discard what's not, add what is uniquely your own. So just when you were saying that, I was like, yes, that's definitely it. And I just think it requires us to have a little bit of discernment, which, like anything else, is a skill. It is a muscle that can be developed over time, because you're gonna. I've taken a lot of bad ideas from the beaver and implemented them. Be like, well, that's a bad idea. I'm not going to do that again. So that takes understanding of how things play out too. So I would just add that, but no pushback on that, man.
I love it. Let's end there. And actually, let's make a note, me and you, let's make a note to cover that next time, because I think what you just laid out there for all of us is really important in terms of, I think people would be really interested in understanding, how do I discern this? Even how do I discern, when I'm listening to what, policies and all this stuff, how do I discern what's going to be a good thing or a bad thing? So we'll end there.
Cool.
Thank you, D, and I hope you guys have been enjoying. Danny and I want to keep doing this because, well, we love just getting together and chatting like this, and we love that. Been getting great feedback from all of you. So please go over and follow Danny. He's at It's Danny Coleman on all the social media channels, at It's Danny Coleman. Also, he's on Substack, where Danny and I are spending a lot of our time. So make sure you follow him there. And if you're liking these conversations, please message Danny or myself, and give us your point of view. Danny and I are going to be incredibly open-minded, so we love, if you have any pushback on what we said, you want us to consider something, send it our way. We may talk about that, and also let us know what other topics you might want to me and Danny to tackle. All right. So Danny, just stay on the line. Let's make sure this uploads. But for all of you who are hanging out live, we will see you next time.